Tiki nā rā ko te pūtake o ngā kōrero o te wānanga tiki nā tura ko te hautapa o ariki kau whatatia e tāne te wānanga ki runga ki e taura, ki runga ki e tauira. Ka koe rā te matapunanga mai angi te matapui huiho, whanau, whanau, tau mai te mauri, hauie, huie, tai, ki e. Tēnā anō rā tātou, ko tātou ka tatu mai nei ki tā tātou kaupapa e tēnei pōnei. Koutou I tei mai tuwhiti, koutou ka pūhono mai I o koutou kāinga, I o koutou hāneanea tanga. Nei mai ki tā tātou kaupapa I tēnei pō. Ko toi tangata tēnei mihi atu nei kia koutou o tira kia kōrua. Kuruho, kōrua ko Rosie tēnā kōrua I tēnei ahi nei. I tō kōrua whakai, kia haramai ki tēnei kaupapa, kia kōrero ki tā tātou kaupapa I tēnei pō. And those of you who have joined our kaupapa, our Zoom, to wānanga what kaupapa is, kaupapa our game is. Kia mōhio mai koutou. I have a hononga to the game and its inaugural sort of stages, earlier stages, and we're very privileged to have Kuruho and Rosie join us tonight and agree to elaborate a little more on the game and its advances over the years and just something that's blown up. It might give you an insight on how to play it and whatnot, and something that's sort of just taken over the motu, a resource that's been invited by a number of organisations and real initiatives. Nō reira, tēnā kōrua, kia kōrua te rākau kōrero, Kuruho, kōrua ko Rosie, tēnā kōrua.
Tēnā koutou katoa, kua are mai I tēnei wā. Mihi atu ki a koe rangi nui te pā whakawairua I whakatūwhera I te hui nei. Ko Kuruho Wereta tōku ingoa. He uri whakaheke o ngā iwi mai te upako tika, ngā tiraukaua, ki te tonga, te atiawa, ngā te tuaranga tira, ngā tika hongungu hoki. Kei ōtaki ahau e noho ana I enei rangi. Nō reire, mihi ana ki a koutou katoa. Tino miharo tēnei kaupapa, te kēmu kaupapa eki, ngā mahi Aotearoa. Nō reira, hono mai. Ka huri ki te reo ingarihi pēr?
Kia kōrua, kia kōrua.
Atona wā.
Tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Rosie Remmerswaal tēnei, he moku puna tēnei o te tiriti o Waitangi. No horana, no airangi o kutupuna, no ku te Waimārie ki te noho ki tēnei whenua taurikura nei. Nā reire, e mihi ana kia koutou katoa, me taku miharo atu, ki tēnei o ngā kaupapa whakahirahira. Nā reira, ka tīmata tātou I ngā kōrero. Ko Rosie, I hope. My name is Rosie. I am a mokopuna of the Treaty of Waitangi, and my whānau have been lucky enough to live in Aotearoa since the very year after the tiriti was signed. So I feel like a real Kiwi, and I'm really tēnei te mihi, ki ngā tangata whenua me te tino whakapapa o Aotearoa nei. Nā reira, e mihi ana, e mihi ana, e mihi ana. Kia koe Kuruho.
Hi, my name is Kuruho Wereta, and I grew up in Otaki. It's a little town north of Wellington. My background is in wood carving and weaving. Grew up going through kohanga reo, which is a real privilege. And somewhere along the line, walking inside te ao hurihuri, sort of lose track of my te reo Māori journey, but never truly lost it. And my iwi a Ngāti Raukaua te Aotearoa, Ngāti Tuarangatira, Ngāti Kahungunu, just to name a few. And my background is in sort of mahi toi, but also in mahi taiao and te akina taiao. So I worked for the Department of Conservation for 7 years, and also Auckland Council, looking after whenua, looking after people that come onto the whenua, and just caring for the kararehe as well. And that's a big passion of mine. And so, somehow found myself developing board games about 3 years ago, which we're going to get into.
Because my kia mohi mai koutou e hoa mā was a few years ago. I was through mahi. I was privileged enough to have these tokorua in my akomanga as I was teaching in Awanuiarangi in Tāmaki Makaurau there. And at the time, this was a whakaro, and it was on a piece of paper at the time. And so there's been a lot of developments since then. You may have seen it across the motu. No reira, we're very, very lucky to have Ene Tokorua come back to give us a little bit more about the game's development, where it's gone, where it's going. Kamutu Te Reo Māori at the moment, and the way that it is being taught across the motu, and expectations are, I mean, the wants and the demand for Te Reo Māori is there, but there are also resourcing issues, and engagement issues, and e rā mea katoa. Nō reira, koira te painga o tēnei kaupapa, koira te hāngaitanga o tēnei kēmu ki a tātou kaupapa i tēnei wānei. So we're looking forward to seeing how kaupapa has tackled this, has tackled these issues. Nō reira, ai, kia kōrua.
Well, so where do we begin? So, and we'll try to give the quick version, but yeah, Rosie and I met in Tāmaki Makaurau at Umupuia Marae. We ended up flatting together. Rosie wanted to live in a flat where there was reo Māori being spoken, so she made that choice to come into an environment that was sort of conducive in helping her on her journey. Yeah, as when we were at home, we used to challenge ourselves, you know, as flatmates, let's talk te reo Māori every Saturday. And even though it was challenging, we still attempted to do that. But then one day we were playing a board game with a good friend of mine, Te Kahu, and Rosie's like, let's play this game in te reo Māori. And then we gave it a go, and we actually had a lot of fun with it. And we're like, why isn't there a game like this already? You know, we're just so surprised that there wasn't a game like this, especially for learners of te reo Māori or speakers of te reo Māori. And we were like looking at the value that having fun can bring to sort of your journey of learning and connecting people together, or connecting whānau together in a fun, positive, happy environment inside the realm of Rēhia. Yeah, and so that was the orokohanga. That's what sparked the idea. It was just us playing some board games and speaking te reo Māori. Kia koe, Rosie?
Kia ora. Yeah, so just picking up on what you were saying earlier, Ranginui, you know, there's so much demand for te reo, and there's waiting lists of hundreds of people on every, you know, akomanga reo Māori. So one of the whāinga for this kēmu is that we, instead of competing for reo Māori spaces, that we create more reo Māori spaces, converting, you know, kāinga and bars and pubs and games nights, you know, into wāhi kōrero Māori. So yeah, one way to address this massive high, you know, hiakai, this massive desire, and especially for, you know, tangata tauiwi and tiriti, that we aren't necessarily need to take up those spaces because we're creating more spaces. Hoi anō. Yeah, so that was the kind of the seed where we began to kind of play in these, you know, play these kēmu Pākehā i te reo Māori, and we would be, you know, and it was like super fun, but it was also kind of problematic, right? Because we're starting with this English words, and then we're like whakamārama i te reo Māori, and then we end up at this English word again.
No,
and, you know, so, but then we'd get words like, you know, embezzlement, and you're like, he te tāhai koe, ito mahi, you know, but then but at the end of the day, ko te reo Pākehā, ko ngā whakaro Pākehā, ko ngā kaupapa Pākehā, ko te mātauranga Pākehā kei runga. So that was kind of the
we've seen that like opportunity where we could really whakaniko a board game with mātauranga Māori, you know, relevant to te Aotearoa, and really raise our awareness of, say, build our punakupu up, build up our understanding of people relevant to Aotearoa, places that are relevant to Aotearoa, and talking to the taiao and stuff, where we were looking at these other games, and, you know, we didn't even know half of these places or half these kupu. you know, so that was cool too, to be able to move from that to that. And then that's when the sort of draft board designs come about, which we've got some pikitia to sort of show like the journey, and sort of it started 3 years ago. And
if we can we all see my screen now? Perfect. So this is where we kind of got to at the end, which is our kēmu kaupapa. But if we go back a few steps, it comes to, you know, the real kind of origins, and a piece of paper, and some later on some beautiful kāri, some harakeke paper, and even after that some drawings. And this probably, Ranginui, that might have been when you probably played most of these versions of it, right?
I think this one
before that on linen.
It was like it was even like a folded up piece of paper, I think, and might even been before any of those.
Yeah. So that's kind of where things kind of began. And then through working with Aroha Tamihana from Maimoa Creative, and you know, we really developed ona āhuatanga, and also incorporated a bunch of rules over the ways, because what kind of happened was we would have this little baby of a kēmu, and then we would go to Kura Rēhia, we'd go to Kuruho, we'd go to Marae Noho, we'd go to our akomanga reo Māori, and that's what we would just have, as people going like, okay, when can I get one? I want one for Christmas. And we just really experienced the incredible tautoko and enthusiasm from the community to just, you know, really follow through with this, which was really what had us.
If you go back a slide, Rosie, to that black and, can you go back to the black and white slide?
Sure. This one?
No, the other one.
This one?
Yeah. So like this was like one of the sort of first attempts of trying to make a version where we could produce stuff, a board game for those people. There was a huge desire and a huge need and a huge hunger for games, and we were just trying to support people. So we rushed. We're always rushing to try and get to the next sort of target. And so we actually had this down like a launch of a sort of a pre-launch quite a few years ago at Māori Land Hub. And so we made these cards and got some kupu together. And you can see in this design, you know, you've got sort of āhuatanga Māori, but we really wanted to embellish even more so with sort of the mātauranga from mahi, from Te Ao Toi and Te Ao Aotearoa. And so we went back to the drawing board, even though we loved this one. It had like whare on the four sort of corners representing the different sort of elements of people and then where they come from and how people have to work together to play the game to succeed. And, but yeah, I just want to acknowledge here that, you know, like my mother, Deborah Buston, was really influential in sort of supporting us on the journey, and everyone else too that has helped, but people could see the need for us to have a board game like this. Yes, we're sort of at where we are now, and some of you are probably wondering how you play. And could you go back to the other slide of the finished one?
Yeah. Oh yeah, one sec. Ding ding ding.
Yeah.
There's a kaumātakitaki viewers, if you've got any pātai, just flick them through and I'll be sure to send them through shortly when the Kuruho is finished. Kia ora.
Yeah.
So now... sorry, you were about to.
The lag on the thing.
You know, do you want to just do it old school?
Yeah. So the objective of the kēmu is that you start in the centre on the sort of centre tile, and there are 6 categories, 6 kaupapa, and there are kupu mahi, tapu tapu object, and the little marae is wāhi in places of Aotearoa. The little puti puti, the pūtakawa flower, represents the taiao, and the little tangata there, or rangatira, represents ingoa or names, And then that's the tipurangi, which is like the other kupu, the random kupu that don't fall under those other categories. And so the objective is to progress your way from the center of the board and make your way out towards the toa. So you can play as one team, big collaborative approach, which is where everyone wins. Or you can play, competitively with up to 3 teams. And you can have 2 to 8 players on each team, but really kaya ia rōpū tā rātou ake tikanga and how they want to run it, and there's heaps of variations which we've seen. But yeah, and the objective is to, as you start on the kupu, so you'd start on the kupu mahi. Everyone starts on the kupu mahi first, and you've got to describe one of these kupu mahi kupu which are on these cards. So there's a stack of cards which Rosie has, and I'm going to give it over to Rosie to just maybe up to you and I, Ranginui, to maybe try guess what the kupu is.
Ka pai.
Mama noiho. So she's reading from the kupu mahi thing, and then while the person on the team, the describer, is got their turn, there's also a timer going, and we also introduced something else, which is a Maui card, which is to the rauemi kia whakananakia, because Maui was known for challenging and pushing the boundaries, and with those there was really good lessons through that. And so in Maui cards, we were able to weave in narratives and different stories around metaphors or different pūrākau from around Aotearoa. But what they do, they can hinder your gameplay, or they can really advance or support it. So that can just make it a lot more funnier. And a lot of studies and a lot of science around the benefits of learning through play. And so if we can bring te reo Māori into an environment or context where you're learning or you're having fun with it, and you can do it at your home, because we see that te reo Māori was spoken at kura all the time, or at whānau, or at marae. But when the tamariki come home, which are the future generations, we really need to support them and need to connect our parents and the kaumātua and our community together, so we can all engage and get off the sort of screens and stuff for a bit and engage as a whānau, create that whanaungatanga, and start talking to reo Māori in a really safe environment to develop their reo kāinga. And that was a big thing. So one of our big sort of vision statements was the possibility of a bilingual Aotearoa, and how can we create that? We're not in government level where we're creating policies and stuff, but we can do it from the ground. And this is how we can influence that change. And just wanted to say that it's challenging, but it's just heaps of little steps for us to get to here. And that sort of aki and that arahi that we've had from the community throughout Aotearoa to just keep working on this. And so Rosie's going to have don't worry about the Maui cards, because it might make it too hard.
Yeah, we'll come back to Maui in a little while.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the 2 main mechanics. We've got our whakamārama kupu, and then we've got our Maui cards, which work a bit like chance cards throughout the game. So you have your little reference cards that tell you which kaupapa mean what, according to the different tohu. And then on the back, we also have a wee pronunciation guide, so that so one thing we've really worked on is making it really accessible. So at first we wanted it to be something that people who speak Māori can play, and that was great. And then we had a whole bunch of people who were really at the beginning stages of their real Māori learning journeys, and they were like, we want to play this, we want to play this, we want to play this. And so it actually happened at the Māori Land event. We had a bunch of my whānau, a bunch of my whanaunga who have, they know a few kupu, but, don't speak Māori. And there was a beautiful 8-year-old from a kura kaupapa who was playing with them. And she starts playing and she goes, it's getting cold, so I need to put on my kōti. And getting my whānau to guess what that Māori word that she'd used in context are. So we'll start, I'll start drawing some cards, and we'll show you the 3 different levels of difficulty where we can play it. So at the highest level of difficulty, we're playing I te reo Māori. So I'm going to look at, so if we're on kupu mahi, because our waka is on kupu mahi, then when I draw my card, I look at that kupu mahi. And then I whakamārama atu I te kupu ki a koutou. Matapai mai, hea te kupu. Nā reira. Ko tēnei Māori ora.
Tihei.
Kia ora.
Oh, okay.
Rāpiti.
Oma.
Kia ora.
Titiro.
Kōrero, whakarongo,
Titiro.
titiro, ka pai. Te reo tuatahi I te marae.
Karanga.
Karanga.
Ka pai. Me inui ki te atua, kei te ahahau.
Karakia.
Kia ora. Ka ahahau, ka whakarongo, ka
Kōrero.
kōrero. Kia ora. Ki oku nei.
Whakaaro.
Kia ora. Ki te kore te kai te pai, ka puta mai anō, nā reira ka aha. Kei te
Ruaki.
haurangi hea.
Ruaki.
Kia ora.
Ruaki. Kua tō te wā. Kua
Ka
pau
pai.
te wā.
Nā,
Yeah.
mena kua tō te wā. So we do that, we keep going until 1 minute is up. And then we have a little titiro at the little kāri, pile of kāri that we've just successfully gotten. And we go tahi, rua, toru, wā, rima, ono, whetū, waru, iwa. And then that's the number of places that we move. Tahi, rua, toru, wā, rima, ono, whetū, waru, iwa. Okay? And that gives us our new kaupapa for the next round. And for the purposes of this whakatauwera, we'll do the next round in the intermediate level. So in the intermediate level, we understand that our group, we can use as much reo as we have, but we understand that the group knows a bunch of vocab in Māori, but we don't necessarily need to
They might not have the sentence structure.
Might not have all the sentences and might not just, maringi noa, but they've got that vocab, especially if you've built it up over a time of playing in the easy one. So the level, the intermediate one is you whakamārama with your words in English, with Māori, with your whakaari, and then you get your team to guess what the Māori word is. So in this one, you don't say what that is, you just get them to guess what the Māori word is. Ka pai? So if I'm sick, I might go to, if I'm sick, I might go to a tohunga or a tākuta to get a
Rongoa.
rungoa, kia ora. So we're in tapu tapu, by the way. I'm going to look outside the these things.
Matapihi.
Kia ora. It's what I use to dig the ground.
Ko.
Ko, kia ora. I wear these when it's cold outside.
Karapu.
Kia ora. I wear these when it's cold inside on my feet.
Tōkena. Hiripa.
Kia ora, ka pai. I listen to this. I listen to this when I'm driving my car to hear about the news.
Reo irirangi.
Kia ora. So, ka tō te rā, te wā, tahi, rua, toru, wā, rima, ono. Okay, so that's how you play in the intermediate level. If you want to go even more beginner than that, then you can play it at the total kākano stage, which is that we use the kupu Māori in context, a bit like we were saying with the, it's getting cold, I'm going to put on my kōti.
Kia ora.
So, and this one is demo. This will be a little bit obviously basic for y'all because you'll understand the words even
The kupu.
if
Yeah, we
I
got to guess
hadn't
it. And so what we
sure not.
sometimes, so if you've got players in the same of the same game, you can identify the language levels, and you play two teams, and you might have one team, that on the sort of the toho stage, on the beginner level, and another team in sort of the matato level. So it's actually it's still quite competitive and a really sort of fair game. We've actually seen people, tourists and people come to Aotearoa and been able to play this game really well, which is in that sort of beginner level that we're going to be doing. Yeah.
Okay. So this beginner level goes like so. So I'm going to write you a reta.
Leta.
Kia ora. Happy birthday. I'm going to blow up this poiho for you.
Balloon.
Kia ora. My car has 4 wira.
Wheels.
Kia ora. My grandma plays the piano.
Piano.
Kia ora. I use this to carve in wood.
File.
Chisel.
I use a file to carve some wood.
But yeah,
I'm running late, so I'm going to get a kutarere and I'm going to push my way to my hui.
Scooter.
e-scooter.
Kia ora. Away. So if you see, so what everyone is doing is they're listening out for what word it would be in the sentence. The other way you can do it is, say for it's kupu mahi, you can say it first and then do a demo. And so, you know, everyone's watching and then they're just searching for making that connection.
Yeah,
And
another one is, so for words, a tapu tapu, you can say, I'm going to get the kuti kuti. And so what's happening with the kai tākaro and the players of the game is they have to critically think about how their team members are going to receive the information, because something that sits right in their head doesn't always make sense, you know, externally. And so that's the real thing that's getting stretched and trained, is that muscle in your brain, and creating those word associations through some sort of description, because you can't say the kupu, or not all the times, and being able to associate it with an action, or, you know, hammer or whatever the tapu tapu is, or action. So you're creating those sort of neural pathways and helping sort of aid that learning in a way. And yeah, it really does cement it in there and plant it in there really, really well. So it's good for that.
And one thing, particularly at the beginner level, with people who are, you know, learning te reo, is that often we'll pause between each round, and then the person who's just done the kōrero will repeat each of the words that were just said. And then, so then we'll do 2 rounds, right? So we've got the score for who's going to be the first to get to the toa. But then they also have the score, which is the kai whakamārama will say the kupu. So they'll say, you know, whai kōrero. And their team has to write down that kupu based on, you know, listening. So the speaker has to practice doing their tohu, doing their beautiful whakahua, so that you can hear exactly how to spell it. And then the teamer gets extra points and like a separate tally of how many kupu they accurately wrote down. And then that's kind of ways that then they, you know, it's a way to revise it. Can be, you know, your word lists and all that. Ki roto i te akomanga.
Yeah, and yeah, no, so in the sort of, back to the sort of creation of the game, you know, looking at te ao Māori, what are the sort of big values and the principles that guide us in our world, and it's our connection to te taiao and looking after our whenua. And we had a lot of people encouraging us to make this game, and a lot of people saying, you know, you can go to China and get it made over in China, and, you know, we would all have it, and, you know, but there was sort of an inherent understanding that we have an obligation and a duty of care to Papatuana, Kuntane, and the rivers and our whole environment. So there was also the development of the game and the kupu and the look of it, but also the understanding that we needed to adhere to looking after our environment, and how can we embody that whakaaro into the game. So if people are buying the game, they're actually buying into it, whether they know it or not, but they're adapting those values of, you know, kai te akitanga, and it's going into it. And then, you know, because I remember my koro, he would have a pair of shoes, and he had them for like until the day, you know, he passed away. He looked after his tapu tapu and his items, and it's something that we really need to retrain into tamariki and to the future generations around how can we, if we buy something, what is the whakapapa of that? Where does it come from, and what's going to happen when it breaks down? Can it break down? So we were committed to making the game in a way where it aligned with those values. So the board, you would see, it's made out of
yeah, I could take a little tour on, like, you know, how that has manifested in the kēmu is that our box here is made out of undyed card. Our board is made out of sustainably grown plywood from Aotearoa. And it actually even has a little koha, a little hole in the manaea's mouth, so you can pop it on your wall in your classroom or at home. Our box here, this is made out of 100% recycled card, which has been vegetable dyed and then foil printed. The kari are all printed here in Aotearoa by a company called SAW, which is a carbon zero printing company who have, we chose them because they've got the best environmental credentials out of any printer company that we could find. Apparently, they would say in New Zealand. Our pukatohu kēmu, which shows you how to play the kēmu, and by the way, is in Māori on one side and in English on the other side.
And while we're on that, I'll just talk about, so as well as creating a resource for everybody, and this Te Reo Māori belongs to everybody, it was really important that we try to capture sort of a generic reo that sort of captured across Aotearoa, because we wanted to get it everywhere. It wasn't sort of regional specific. So we had to find QAs, and so we went and asked for the support from Hemi Kelly to have a look over this and really kānohi ho miro the kupu, and so he also helped with the bilingual making it bilingual. So we've got the pukatohu kēmu and the game guide, the whole game in the box, everything is with Māori being the primary kupu, and then with the reo Pākehā sort of, on the right hand side. So there's always that focus on that. And I think that's just best practice now. And and then the only thing that's not from New Zealand is the timer, because there was no one in New Zealand that made a timer.
It's made out of resin, so it's completely solid. So you could not break this timer. It's going to be with you for your life.
That might be
as a plastic one is always going to last forever, but this one's indestructible. So that's how we got around that one.
It'll be timeless timer.
What's that? A timeless timer. Yeah.
And just something else was all of the sort of the whakarake and the whakaniko, inside of the board, and throughout the little waka, which we called, they're like your playing pieces. And if you were just translating, piece or game piece, people would come back with tohu, but because the waka transports your team, we had to look at it with sort of trying to be more of a whakaaronga Māori, and this is moving your team around. So it's like in that all category as well. And then we're looking at some people would have said timata to start at the start of the board, and I've been wanting to say mutuna, but we also we're actually embarking, so we use the word eke and then toa to sort of symbolize that you're championing onto that.
We like to say at the end of basically any game that whichever team wins. Engari ko te tino toa ko te reo Māori. A real champion is always te reo Māori when kaupapa is being played. So feel free to steal that and cheese it up. Always met with a good eye roll.
But because I've heard it a lot, and so I do believe in it, and that's what sort of keeps us going. And te reo Māori is not just want to stay. This is not something that it belongs to everybody, and so we've just sort of put it into a certain sort of anga, and making this rauemi for ngā tangata katoa, and really wanted it. That's the commitment, is to grow te reo Māori, and it started off with that passion, to get this out there, not really as a business at all, but in te ao hurihuri, you sort of have to have that sort of structure to be able to go to a printing company and get them to commit to printing 1,000 boards and then to pay graphic designers and stuff. So that's been a great
make sure if someone
journey.
Decides to swallow one of these tohu that we don't lose their house or
but it was really nice to be able to just think about how we make it more Māori as well, and so bringing those patterns into it, which come from my understanding of mahi toi, and bringing them in, really sort of provide an enchantment over over the board and carry with all of the mātauranga and the narratives that relate to all of those, whether it's the stories about kai, or if it's about Pākati hai hai, or waiwai pākura uno nahi, and there's just heaps of stuff that we can talk about there, and patterns found in the whare nui or within Kete Whakairo, Pātaki, and what the Pātaki symbolises in Te Ao Māori, and so we can just keep driving in, so there's a wānanga in every aspect for the players to find. So not just in the kaupapa categories, but inside the whole lot. And the kupu in the cards, are really important because they're, there's names in there too, and we just wanted to mihi atu to everybody, who's been acknowledged inside the game, and all of the āhuatanga and stuff, and just wanted to always make sure that people understand how, Te Ao Māori and how we look after things. And so that's sort of just mihi atu to that and all of the kupu that are in the cards.
Let's have whakamarama to the Maui kāri, the kāri Maui. So these, exactly like, we all know Maui as the tinihanga, as the haututu, but also quite a champion, right, of Te Moana Nui Akiwa. So just like Maui, these Maui cards, some pose a challenge and others a perk. So, for example, and a lot of them are based on Maui's mahi. So, for example...
but before you pull a card, we have a little coin.
So how they work is that between every round, ka whiua te kapa. So if the kapa lands on our tails, which is our taniwha, then we draw a Maui card. If it lands on the upoko or te kuini, then ka haere tonu. Ka haere tonu. Ka pai? So, etahi o enei, he painga, etahi he nanakia. For example, hopu ki ne te rā, to capture the sun. So if you get this card, then you get 2, it's like this, time's being slowed down. So you get 2 rotations of the inewa. He hatu. There's a few controversial ones in there. We love this one, te matatini, which is that me waiata haka pau mō te rānei i o kupu katoa, i o kōrero katoa. So when you get this one, you have to sing, or you have to haka, or you have to chant everything that you say.
That's quite funny. That's a funny one.
If you get this,
because it creates a lot of laughter too.
Yeah,
and then that's when heaps of learning and play happens. If
you get tuhia ki te orai, then that's a play on that, on that kōrero, that write it on your forehead, remember it. That means that instead of you whakamarama the kupu, you actually put the kāri on your forehead, and your team give you clues, and you have to guess. So that kind of reverses the gameplay. There's others like tāhai ārero, the stolen tongue, which is that you have to kōrero I te tehi reo aiwi ke. Speak in a different mita, or if you're doing it in English, then you'd speak in a different accent.
But I was just being mindful of that because I was teaching some kids at a kuru the other day, and they were playing in the English, sort of the Te Reo Pākehā version. And I was like, but just be mindful, guys, we're not appropriating or being insulting to this other iwi gauges. It's all inside in these confines of, harikoa and safe places. So I just wanted to say
often it's good to stick to either, baby language, or, old person accent, or, or one of your own tupuna, if you're not, anyway. And then there's other ones like kakata kai, based on the kōrero between kai and tiniro. So in this one, it's like you're kai, and you don't want to get busted, so you're not allowed to show your teeth.
Oh, kia ora.
Niho more. This one's a popular one. Oh, I was going to say, actually, tau tīrai raka, which is like the kupu whakarete about having a bum, flitting around like a fantail. So in that one, you're not actually stuck on one kaupapa. You can flip between whichever kaupapa on the card that you want. So that one's like one that makes things a little bit easier.
And that's quite good, because when people come onto like ingoa category, or wāhi category, those are always known to be the hardest ones. And so if you pulled that one out, then it's definitely going to help your team advance. Yeah.
And then there's ones that make it more difficult, such as tāhere with the snare, which means that you can't use your hands or your body actions. You've just got to, mā te kupu anake. As well as things like awatere, like a flowing river, so you can skip as many as you want to that way. Usually you can only skip one. And then there's a few controversial ones, such as raupatu whenua, which means that no matter what, you've got to you switch places with another team, with another team's waka. Yeah, so if you draw one of those Maui cards, then that rule is applied immediately for that immediate round. And then if you stick to it, if you say you're on katakai and you don't show your teeth, then you're free of the ture. It doesn't, or if you don't stick to it, you've got two options. Either you forfeit all of your moves from that round where you broke the rule, or the rule sticks to you for the next round. So your team has to, get free of it. They have to tuki before they get free of it. So yeah, that'll ka haere tonu, tai atu, kia tai tete, kia tai rawa tete hi tima ki te toa, ka toa te rā ropu. That's how you keep going with Maui cards and playing until one of the ropu reach toa.
I think we're all just this, one of the spokes in the wheel of, revitalizing, te reo Māori. There's so many different people doing so many great kaupapa, and I think, mihi mutunga kore kia rātou, kia tātou. And I think, we, just want to acknowledge, so when we made this game, that it was actually inside the realm of Rēhia, and there was all this other stuff that's already happened, in the past, and now our tupuna understood the importance of playing. And so you had taonga tākoro and tāpere and karetao and ways of telling stories, and the importance of, bringing in that sort of leisure or fun and happiness into environments. And so when we launched this game, we didn't just want to make it it's just the launch of the board game, but it's actually, let's whakanui and celebrate taonga tākoro mahi Rēhia. And so we've got we put together a little, not a little actually, it was quite a big huihuinga that happened at Umupuia Marae in May this year. And we had 250 people show up. And initially we were just let's just keep it little, 100 people, but the interest towards it obviously shows how keen people are to, engage with te reo Māori in this type of, with this wairua. Because often, the marae or in some kaupapa, it's, we're not actually celebrating or talking about kaupapa hari. And so to have a kaupapa hari, harikoa on a marae, people really love, and it brings a different mauri to it. And so we invited friends who had met along the way and new friends, and put the karanga, put the call out really far and wide, come and celebrate, te reo te rehia. And so we had, Dario there, and Charles Royal, and Tapo Haropati, and Weremu Sarich, and Jerome Kavanagh, and, just many great people who have all contributed to, the revival of kaupapa like this, because we often hear about other deep wānanga, but to always be talking about the sort of the hatakihi and all of that other stuff is really important too. And sort of my sort of wero to others is that it's, it's not up to just people other people to do it, but it's up to us to create more and more resources and keep challenging how we're going to do that in our modern world. Because Rosie and I, we weren't game designers. We just had an idea, and we just sort of keep progressing and pushing forward because of the sort of what's possible. And and that's sort of the big whittle, is how do we keep moving forward, keep relevant, keep tikanga alive, but also keep our future generations engaged.
Ko te poinga hoki he waua te not anybody and everybody. I mean, you potentially can, but some are better than others that are coming up with Te Reo Māori games. It's quite a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken so much perseverance, ranginui. Like but every single time, like, you know, the number of hours spent on spreadsheets late at night, the number of like kōrero conversations and, you know, prototypes that were just not quite right, and, you know, these materials and like all of that stuff, like there were so many points where we could have just gone like, nah, this is just, you know, and we're studying full-time, we're working full-time, we got stuff on, right? But every single time we would just play the game, like koira te kai, you know, te wairua hihiri, te wairua, you know, tono mai, you know, just the keenness that people, you know, really felt, and just to see how things would, for example, often it would change the, really transform like the culture of a class environment, where often you have some people who are like giving it a go, having a kōrero, maybe can't even shut them up sometimes, and then there's other people who you almost have to prod with a stick, you know, to kind of get to actually whakahua, you know, and say a kupu. Whereas when you have this, man, and these, you know, ka whakakōrero te tangata, but also it would really give people the opportunity, you know, to just, you know, whether mehe pukinga, you know, mehe hohonu te puna kupu, like if someone's got a really broad range of vocabulary, then they're just an ace guesser, right? If someone loves you know, can do a kōrero, then they get to share that skill within, you know, within the confine of 1 minute at a time, and it becomes quite democratic, you know, because it's really evenly shared. And particularly with people who have they have a mental block where they really want to get it right, that just dissolves, because you just have to whakamārama, you know, you don't get the opportunity to be whakamā, because, you know, you just have to communicate, you have to get the idea across.
Just touching on what Rosie said, that so when playing in like a classroom environment, and the kaiako's there, and the kaiako's actually engaging with the tauira in a different space. So you can see shifts between people who may be really confident here, but maybe not so confident in a play space. And so you see those dynamics happening as well. But one, you know, saying was, I think, is, you know, mā te hapa ka tika, and also like how can a teacher fix your hapa if he can't hear you speaking? And so inside the the competitiveness of it all, you know, I know for myself, I've been challenged myself to like speak, because I feel unconfident in front of my teacher, and that's held me back. But when inside a space of competitiveness or in a game, it's not really about wete reo anymore. It's just really about getting your team members to understand you. And if you're articulating and they actually are guessing the word, okay, you kind of you're inside the realm of it, and you can practice your wete reo later, but you're building up your confidence and being able to string together some sentences. And then that's a real great kuruhuna that's happening inside the play in different environments. And
which is not to say that, you know, the whole kēmu can be devoid of, you know, he aronga ki wete reo. Like, you know, you can always introduce new house rules, like, you know, if you do a hapa, then you've got to go to the next word, you can't get that point, or you've got to describe it using hangu, you know, or you've got to describe it using this or that, you know. And it's, the thing is, at the end of the day, it's a board, and then it's 150 cards with 900 kupu on them in their translations. So the world is yours. Like, you can do whatever you want with those ones.
Even the way we did that tonight, because Te Reo Māori, we're trying to make Te Reo Māori as accessible as possible. Kia whiua ki te ao, trying to remove any barriers in regards to learning Te Reo Māori in different organisations in whatever space that works for you. And we've just demonstrated a way where we could potentially use this game and on an online platform, which might be another sort of just for those who might be looking like. So I saw Te Mātawa, I saw Te Puni Kōkiri and other people who looked into this kaupapa, and that might be another way of how they might go about the game now, just how they might incorporate it into online teaching. And at the same, and the other cool fact about the kēmu was, even when you're talking about the narrative, I was going, oh, so you said, this kāri is te kāri a kai, something around.
Yeah, kakata a kai.
Ai, ko te painga, ko mātou tātou ngā mea mōhi ana ki tērā pūraka, I was going, oh, that'll be the hide your teeth.
Yeah.
Narrative, and he rawe tērā kauhanga nui to see the incorporation of both of those with our pūrako and how we make those sort of dictate what we do and how we play the game. It's cool. It's awesome. And as you were saying earlier, Kuruho, it's just got layers on layers on layers of akoranga, from pūrako, iwi, it's got mita things in there, it's got te ao toi rēhia at the same time. There's so much going on in this game. I suppose it's firstly how do they interpret it, and how do they find these kurahuna? I suppose that's what they are. They're a kurahuna throughout the whole thing, and you can make lessons out of so much in this game.
And I think that's the great thing about mātauranga Māori, as I'm starting to learn more about it. And it's like you can create mātauranga Māori out of sort of anything. You can find what it means to you and how it happened and the place that it happened, and what was going on and what were some of the indicators and the tohu wā and all of that. And so it's all just sort of has this great way of coming together. And there's heaps of wānanga to be had, because if you don't know a word, like, oh, I didn't know that word, and you're like, oh, that's a new word too, like, oh, I didn't know that story as well. So it's really good. And you're right, and I just wanted to talk a bit about, I've still got time left to talk about some of the challenges that Kura Rēhia, which is the name of our company, want to sort of, not challenges, but want to work towards and make understood, is like, how do we do right in this space that was it's te reo Māori, and how can we do right to the people, because we're sort of acknowledging that Māori and then Pākehā, but working together to make something. And how do we sort of move together in this world and not cause offence? And I think that's been really challenging, like for us as a little young company, and just trying to work together to make sure that we're not causing any offence, especially around like language trauma or stuff like that. And the other challenges around accessibility, because we're made it in Aotearoa. There's a great thing about making it in New Zealand is we're building up the capacity and capabilities of our manufacturing companies in Aotearoa. So if more people want to make more board games, they're going to be more able to, because they've got the processes in place and they've got people and they know how to do it. They've built up their capabilities to be able to do it. But at the moment, it's still quite expensive to make in New Zealand. And so we really want to adhere to those values of kaitiakitanga and really want to keep the te reo Māori out there. And now, because the price that it has to be sold at, it means that it's not accessible for everybody. And now it almost seems like those with the privilege or the putia, or even the ability to be able to see that they need to buy this game or to have that much putia to buy it, the other people that are buying it, and it might be leaving, a category of people out who are missing out. So how do we make this game adhere to those values of te reo Māori and kaitiakitanga, and also get it out to the people that we really want to get into those communities, because those are the people that we need to arahi and lift up and support and get it to them. So one area that we're working on is you're trying to get to that organisation level where the organisations getting it and then getting and distributing it out to those homes and family and those individuals that really want it but cannot afford it. Or else we look at how we make a cheaper version, and but then you sort of trade off between the sort of quality and sustainability models. It's sort of interesting. So those are some of the challenges or some of the things in front of us we have to navigate through.
And some of the ways that we've started doing that is by making it available in a lot of libraries. who people can go and make a big racket.
Sure.
And also, we've also secured grants to provide so far about 200 kēmu that can be gifted to hapori. So, you know, diverting funds that would normally be, you know, nothing done with them or done, you know, kaupapa Pākehā. It's not just taking up all the Māori funding, but also channeling, you know, rawa into make this more accessible. And I want to just also bring in here, this is a box of potential. And this is an invitation. This box fits in here, right? And you can, if you have multiple ones, it fits in the box, in the pauaka nei. And in here in the future are, you know, the kupu of your mita, of your iwi, ngā tangata mone, ngā tupuna, ngā wāhi whakahirahira ki tō iwi. In here too are, you know, expansion packs of more kāri maui, you know, that can be invented and created, pūrākau woven in. So we'd really, I mean, this kēmu is not just static, you know, it's not it's finished, it's complete, it's, you know, kua rewaina, engari.
Evolving.
It's evolving, it's constantly evolving. And we've done this the whole time with our community, and, you know, ko koutou te hapori, ko koutou ngā kai whakarite o tēnei kēmu. So this is an invitation. Reach out if you have, you know, if you want to make that happen.
Yeah, and the challenge there is, you know, you've got different regional areas. With, like I say, Tainui might have their kupu, and up in the Northland, they might have their kupu. So we'd have to find heaps of specific kupu, but it doesn't have to be that way. But actually, it's not actually for us to decide or determine, but that's to be led by those people of that area, with that, and that's their kupu and their mātauranga. And if they wish to, you know, incorporate it into a game, they could, but they belong, you know, to them. And I think that's really good. So there could be kaitahu kupu. And, you know, I've seen huge differences between kupu. And I was like, you know, how do we choose one? But it'd just be another layer that we can just put into the learning. And I think that's really cool, because then people are learning reo specific to their whakapapa or to their region that they're in. Yeah.
Rawe tērā whakaaro. Ko tukua ki te iwi, he wāhi ki a rātou ake kupu, and their sort of dialectual differences, and including, you know, giving them the opportunity to include whatever they want. Really awesome. And it'll be good to get that feedback to see how they've done that, in case it's got in their event that it's got some sort of extra consideration that you might put into your board game across the motu. He pai tēnā. Ia koutou, ia kōrua e kōrero, and I was going, I wonder why Hemi didn't put in there, or why you guys didn't discuss whakaihu waka as the champion. Tō whakaihu waka, which comes from the whakaaro of whatever waka, ko te ihu o te waka ka uki uta I te tuatahi, ko I rā te toa. However, that's just a little āpiti hanga pā. He kupu whakarite for a champion, tō whakaihu waka. Comes from the comparison of a boat, of our waka arriving to shore first before the other. Tērā. I am very mindful of the time, me hoama. Kuruho, me haere koe a konei nei, a ko tōne nei.
Vai tino tata nei, me wehe au, ki te haere ki te tūnga wakarerangi. Hioi, tērā pia tēnei he wā pai kia whakakopani tōku kōrero. Ki te mihi atu kia koe rangi nei, nau whakaritea I tēnei wāhi, ma maua e kōrero ana ki te kaupapa. Mihi hoki ana ki o mātou hoa, ko tautoko I tēnei kaupapa, koutou katoa. Kia pai te pō, mena he pātai au, karawhiua mai, tukuna atu ki a rangi nui pia. Ai atona wā, ka whakawhiti ngā whakautu ki a kōtou. Ai, kia pai te pō.
Ka pai, kia ora Kuruho. Kia ora. Hori, Rosie, mui tana haere kei te wehe o ki koe?
Kei te pai mo tētahi wā, poto nei. Right.
E pere tino rona te mā, ko taku patai ki a koe.
Right.
So how do they get the game? Where do they get it from? And I suppose it's probably one of my biggest questions now is where do everybody get the game from?
Yeah, so ko tā tātou pai tuku ko speak.maori.nz.
Speak.maori.nz.
Speak.maori.nz. And ki reira, there are, in fact, I'll just bring it up in front of us so we can see it and we'll recognise it. So yeah, speak.maori.nz nei, Kura Rēhia. So this is where you can obviously hokona te kēmu. And then there's also kōrero about, there's also some fun little, nerdy, word maps and all of that sort of thing that have been created along the way.
Right.
But there's also kōrero about te reo o te rēhia wānanga. So there's, some kōrero about things that have happened in the past. And whenever we have a event coming up, then that'll be on here. There's also a little bit of kōrero about those of us who've created it together. And yeah, and then we also have a space here for some free, for some other rauemi and free downloads. So say if you have a pakehi or an organisation who wants to buy it, you can always get this free download of a pamphlet about it. So you can help convince them to buy 20 of them. There's also things like, little poster downloads of kupu maps, and we'll keep adding to this, over time. But yeah, this is where you can buy the kēmu and it gets sent, all made in Aotearoa. There's also a few kōrero, frequently asked questions down there, and all of that, basically. Yeah, that's where you can go. Speak.maori.nz.
And it sounds like there might be a little bit of a waiting list because of the demand. Yes, no?
Yeah, so we've been on back order for a few weeks now. We had the first, hold on, I'm trying to get out of this. How do I stop it? It's the tabs that's there is just gone. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so the first ones that we had were snapped up like in the space of about 2 weeks. And so we're making more at the moment. This special card has been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. So it's arrived and we've got it, and it's off being foiled at the moment. So we've got another about 500 that we will have at our fingertips really soon, like by the end of the month. And then after that we'll have to do another run.
Yeah, ka pai. The only reason why I was saying that is to say that people have to get it quite quickly if they're hoping to get their hands on a board themselves. Yeah. I know that I'll be running past a few of our lessons, how we deliver our akomanga reo Māori. Ai, heo no, kore e whakatōroa i tō noho, Rosie, mo hea nau e wahine puku mahi koe i te nui o au nā kaupapa. Heo ai no, e tika ana kia mihi a koe. O tira kōrua koutou ko tō kāhui, nā koutou tēnei kaupapa I whakarewa, hei oranga mō tō tātou reo Māori, kia whanake ai, kia horapa ai te reo Māori ki ngā tōpito o te ao. No reira, tēnā koe, Rosie, o tira, a koe rā, e tonu nei ki te reo Māori. E hoki nei ngā mahara ki te wā, ki a koe, I ako tonu ana I takiura. Ai.
Yeah.
Ki te wānanga rā, me te nui, ngā whanaketanga e rongo nei au roto I tō reo. No reira, tēnā koe, o tira, tēnā koutou katoa I a koutou mihi. Kia ora rā.
Tēnā koe. Kia ora rā tātou katoa. No maua, no mātou te whiwhi ki te kōrero I tēnei kaupapa. Kāore kore I ki te koe I te, I te wairua hihiri I te wairua, miharo, ka pata mai, you know, he ngākau nui ana, marika. Nā reira, yeah, e mihi ana, e mihi ana, e mihi ana.
Kia ora rā, ka tuku karere atu kia kōrua a konei, kia pai ai taku hoku I tā kōrua kēmu.
Kia ora, ka pai.
Ka pai, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou.